This episode of Recording Studio Rockstars is brought to you by Sound Porter Mastering, Atom Audio, OWC, Jay-Z Microphones, Spectra 1964, and Isotope. In fact, you're hearing my voice right now on the Jay-Z BB29 microphone through the Spectra 1964 STX 100 mic pre, C610 complementer, and Isotope RX and Ozone. So get ready to rock.
I think the best advice I could give to anybody in the home studio situation is try to get an amazing mix without touching anything other than the volume fader. And it's a trick that I know a lot of pros use, and maybe even you use it. But if you do that, I'm telling you, your mix will be 90% done before you know it.
Welcome to Recording Studio Rockstars. I'm Lid Shaw, and this is the podcast created to help you become a rock star of the recording studio.
I'm Brian Murphy, and I strive to produce masters that move your song emotionally, but maintain the spirit of your mix and the intention of the artist. My promise is to give your music its best sonic performance, not simply change it. You work hard on your mix, and I always want to respect that. My goal is to help you realize how great your mix can be, and I'll work hard to make sure it succeeds. I don't just master, I help your mix sound the best it can. Contact me for a free mastering demo at soundporter.com.
I've got two words for you that will help you make your best record ever and not lose it: storage and backup. You want fast drives for composing and recording, and reliable drives for backup so you don't lose all your hard work when something goes wrong. That's why I chose OWC Mercury Extreme Pro 6G internal SSDs for my studio computer and Mercury Elite Pro external drives for archiving. Discover the best OWC drive options for your studio at macsales.com/rockstars. Hey Rockstars, it's your host Lid Shaw, and welcome back to Recording Studio Rockstars, bringing you into the studio to learn from recording professionals so that you can make your best record ever and be a rock star of the studio yourself. My guest today is Brent McCollough, a Nashville-based producer, keyboardist, and artist. He started playing piano by ear at the age of 5, later accepting a full scholarship at University of Alabama to pursue a degree in music production and performance, followed by a full-time graduate teaching fellowship for his master's degree in jazz studies at the University of North Texas. He records and mixes his own music as well as for artists all over the country, and plays keyboards and sings for many bands like the Black Jacket Symphony and Trace Atkins. More recently, he became well known for his coronavirus parody video, Stayin Inside, which went viral and was shared by the Bee Gees, John Travolta, and countless news networks all over the world. And of course, Rockstars, as you might remember, I have the MCI console here in my studio that recorded the original Stayin' Alive and Saturday Night Fever. So it's a great synergy to have Brent here on the podcast with me to talk about this stuff. Brent's studio work and content creation spans many various genres. He's also regularly hired to mix and master live performances, and he currently runs Brent McCollough Studios and prides himself in making his clients' musical dreams become reality. Brent also joined Kurt Hugo Schneider, Tony Sukar, and myself for an OWC workshop webinar a couple of months ago now at this point for how to be creative with video content from your home studio. That link will be included in the show notes, so you can check it there and go see that video as well. And of course, the video Stayin Inside is in the show notes as well, and a bunch of other Brent's videos and musical performances. So please welcome Brent McCollough to Recording Studio Rockstars. Brent, are you ready to rock, my friend?
I'm ready to rock.
Dude, it's great to see you again. That was a lot of fun to do the workshop a little while back. And, you know, what an impressive thing that you've done putting out this video in 2020 when we're all trying to figure out what to do and having it go viral on YouTube.
Thank you. I mean, it was a total accident, to be perfectly honest with you, but I'm very grateful at how it blew up and what ended up happening with it. So,
why don't you give us the brief, the quick update on what the story of that video was that you did?
So it kind of came about because I was talking with my family, and this was right when coronavirus started, and it wasn't really a thing at that moment, but everybody was kind of wondering, okay, is this thing going to be serious, or is it going to be all right? Or, and I was on the fence of like, all right, let's pretend like let's assume it's really bad and hope for the best. So I was just telling my family, I think we need to stay inside and we need to be careful and make sure that, everything that we do everything in our power to just make sure that we, don't get it until we figure out more information about it.
Right.
And so I got off the phone with my mom, and I just like for some reason "Staying Alive" by the Bee Gees popped into my head, and I ran over to my studio and I just started recording, and I was like, "Staying Inside," I need to do something with that, and so I just kind of ran with it, and within an hour and a half, I had basically the finished. I programmed the superior drums part, and I had all the background vocals recorded and everything. And I was like, all right, I got to make a video now. And I expected the video to maybe get, 100 views, 150 views or something like that. And, a week later, I think it had over 500,000 views, and it just kept going and kept going and kept going.
Wow.
And then John Travolta posted it, and that really blew it up a lot. And
What
then
a
after
trip.
that, I know, it was crazy. And then after that, the Bee Gees posted it, which was like a dream come true because I'm a huge Bee Gees fan, obviously. But yeah, it really was wild how it all kind of panned out. But it all just came from a stupid idea that I had on the couch.
That's so funny, man. And when you, so we'll talk more about how you made it, but also once you'd made it, when you just put it out, did you just literally just post it on YouTube, or was there sort of a process for you about sort of priming the pump to make sure that people would see it at all?
And there was, you know, I'm kind of ashamed to say this, but there was absolutely like no promotion at all with that video. I just kind of threw it out there and I was like, whatever, it'll be a funny thing for my family to watch, and then I guess it just got shared and shared and shared. And, when you make a video like that and people really enjoy it or find it entertaining, it doesn't take a whole lot of promotion to make it happen if it's the right video at the right time. And I think I just hit the wave just right with it, and
Yeah.
purely by accident and luck. But like I said, at least something good came out of it.
That's really wild. So, a couple of things I noticed about the video. First of all, it's got about 3.8 million views now, so that's quite a number of views. Perhaps that ramped up pretty quickly right at the beginning, and when you talk about it being timely, it may not continue to ramp up, or maybe it does. I mean, afterwards.
No, it actually has stopped. I mean, it pretty much is completely stopped at this point. It stayed at 3.6 million for probably a month or two. And then actually, I just got another wave of messages of people like in Europe just now discovering it and stuff. And they're messaging me like, "Oh my goodness, this is amazing. This should go viral." And I'm like, "Where were you like 4 months ago?" But
That's really funny. And another thing I noticed when I watched it again just now is that it clocks in at like kind of just under 2 minutes. So you made this, what I would say, wise decision to not try and recreate the full length of the song, but just kind of get right down to the point and keep it really short and watchable and shareable. And I wonder if that probably had an effect too.
yeah, I wonder about that because like I said, I just kind of wanted to do it, and I was like, okay, once I say "Staying Inside," people have got it. They're not. I know if I watched that video, I'd probably watch till the first chorus, and then I'd probably go to another video because I get it. It's funny. I had my laugh, and now I move on to the next thing. So I just was kind of thinking, all right, I probably should just get to the point, keep it short and sweet. But it's funny that a lot of the comments on that video, I mean, is people asking me, "Hey, make a longer version. Why isn't this the full length version? I want to hear the full version." And I honestly think that if it was the full version, I don't know that people would have liked it or it would have gone as viral. I kind of believe that keeping it short and sweet sometimes and leave people wanting more is kind of the best thing to do in a lot of situations.
That was always the best strategy for our band, and we seem to only remember that once in a blue moon.
Yeah.
So in other words,
I feel like we all do, you know?
we went too long at every gig, until there's like 3 stragglers still watching. No, but that's good advice. And maybe it's time for you to put out the Stems remix version, try and do the remix challenge and get people to create their own versions of it and reshare it or put it on TikTok or something. Who knows?
Man, that's a great idea. I've actually thought about, because there's not really a great karaoke version of that song, and I've thought about just putting up the karaoke version on there for people that want to sing along or whatever. But
yeah. Well, I mean, I do remember that the feeling of Stayin Inside was kind of, both made me a little bit nervous at the beginning, but also sounded like oh, that kind of sounds like fun for the very beginning of it. So
right.
I think at this point we're maybe a little. Well, we're going back into the the winter season here. Of course, this will be out much later, but I think we were pretty excited to have some summer and get outside. I know I've been enjoying being in the yard. So
me too.
Yeah. So, and you and I are both here in Nashville, so we're sharing the same climate and all that kind of stuff. Let us know a little bit more about how did you go about making that video. So, what were the players involved? You said you started with Superior Drums. Maybe even just start there. How would you describe what Superior Drums is? Part of the theme of this podcast, of course, is helping people understand that it's really possible to make great sounding music out of your home studio. And, you've been doing that over and over again. And I know you're using a lot of the tools that make that possible.
Yeah. Drums have always been the biggest issue. I think it's probably the biggest issue with most home studio owners. Just because, drums are one of the only things that you really need a great room to record. And I mean, you may not need a great room, but you at least need a room that sounds decent, to make sure that you capture the right sound and everything. So in that aspect, Superior Drummer has been a great thing. It's about as close as you can get, or the closest that I've found at least, to having real drums on your record. And I actually made my first album, Mystery. Most of those songs, like all the real-ish drum sounds that you hear, are all Superior Drummer on there. And I programmed it. I go in and like meticulously humanize it to make sure that it doesn't sound robotic and doesn't sound like a click. Now, I actually didn't really do that on Stayin Inside. I just kind of made a loop and went with it because, I thought that the vocals and everything else kind of just carried that recording. But
I'm pretty sure that's what the Bee Gees did too.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I think they did. I don't remember if Stayin Alive did that, but Saturday Night Fever, I think, was a loop. It was a tape loop. That was the story.
Really?
I heard. Yeah.
Wow.
And then percussion was overdubbed. So the kick snare thing being so consistent, that disco groove was all about looping.
Well, hey, I guess that kind of makes sense that it was so accurate the way that I made it, I guess.
Yeah. So now, of course, if you really want to be authentic, you needed to print Superior Drum to a piece of tape, then make a tape loop, then record that back in, right?
Yeah, man. I mean, that's just a lot of work. That's a whole lot of work. I don't have that gear either. So
yeah, right.
I'm pretty much all in the box. So, I got to make do with what you got.
All right. So Superior Drummer, give us an intro to it. So you open this, it's a plugin you would put on a track. I'm sure it has the capability to like break all the individual drums out to separate tracks if you want, and that kind of thing. Do you start by just grabbing these like pre-recorded performances and assembling them? How should we think about using a new tool like that? Because I can also imagine, if we programmed MIDI notes for a drum part, you listen back and you're like, God, that sounds like a rigid, stiff drum machine. How is it that you get something to sound and feel more interesting to you when it's a programmed drum part?
Yeah, for me, it's a lot about dynamics. And with any MIDI instrument, if you take the dynamics out of the performance, it doesn't sound human, because we as humans are dynamic. We have highs and lows. We hit hard sometimes, we hit soft sometimes. So a lot of the time, what I'll try to do is like, especially with the hi hat, I feel like the hi hat is really where you need those dynamics. Because if the hi hat is just going, "Dit, dit, 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 dit," and
Yeah.
it's the exact same every single time, it's going to be a dead giveaway that it's programmed drums. But if it's like, "Dit, dit, 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 dit," and it's got like some highs and lows, or it's got hard hit, a little softer hit, little harder hit, little softer hit. What I like to do is especially listen to the drums on the record. And I had an advantage with this track just because I was recreating something that had already been done. So I would just reference it and say, all right, how close am I to what they had? And, if I felt like it wasn't up to par, or it wasn't really, um, feeling human or whatever, I just went in and kept tweaking until I got it to that point.
So that's probably an advantage of, um, teaching yourself to do cover songs in the studio, is you always have a reference that you can keep turning to check yourself against.
Absolutely. And I mean, that's been a big thing for me, just learning. And I would recommend it to anybody, try to recreate your favorite records, see how close you can get, because you're going to learn so much. I mean, I know just with Staying Inside, all the string parts and all the horn parts that I played, and all the keyboard stuff, and the vocals, the background vocals, trying to mix it like they mixed it, with the exact amount of reverb that they used, or the exact amount of delay that they used, the type of delay they used, the type of reverb they used, and then also trying to give it like a life, and pretend like I was trying to channel the Bee Gees with my singing and my performance. And I think the performance is really what sold that. And it's so important, because that's all a recording is really, is just capturing a performance. And if the performance isn't there, there's really no way to make up for it in post.
Yeah, it probably helps that you sing well.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Those are some hard parts to sing. If your voice doesn't have it, I don't know if those harmonies are going to sound quite right.
Yeah, I've always sung, really high. Like I've always had a super high register and a falsetto and head voice that in choir in high school, I would sing higher than the sopranos a lot of the time.
Wow.
Like I'd just jump over to their part, and go back, and they'd all look at me like, "What the heck?" Hey man, stay in your lane.
Do you want to know how I get a consistent sound quality mixing hundreds of episodes of Recording Studio Rockstars? Well, I've been cheating all along by using Isotope RX and Ozone on every single episode. Right now, you are hearing RX declick, declip, DS, deplosive, voice denoise, Ozone multiband compression, EQ, and limiting on my voice. If you want great consistent mixes too, go to isotope.com/rockstars and use the code ROCK10 to get an additional 10% off. The secret to great sounding bass in your mix is to start with a great recording. If you've got an awesome part, player, and instrument, then all you need next is to plug that into the BBDI passive direct box from Spectra 1964 through the C610 comp limiter, and you've got an incredible bass tone that goes all the way down. The BBDI is the best sounding bass DI I have ever used. It'll move your pant leg. No hype, no color, just pure tone at Spectra1964.com. What have you learned about singing well in the studio, and what have you learned are some tips that you could share with the rest of us about improving our own singing? You've done a lot of singing. Do you just get in front of a mic now and you don't even have to think about it, or do you still have to teach yourself how to sing each song? And are there lessons you've learned about that?
Yeah, there's a lot of lessons that I've learned about it. The biggest thing is just to relax and have fun, because if you're relaxed and you're having fun, it's going to come through, and people are going to feel that. They're going to feel that on the other end of the recording. And like with Stayin Inside, I was literally like, I was by myself. I was basically like a mad scientist, crazy man. And I was, in between takes, I would be laughing at my idea. I was like, I'd be like cracking up, and I wouldn't even get through a whole take. I've got takes where, I got halfway through the take and I just busted out laughing, because it's so goofy, and I was just having fun with it. And I think it comes through, and that, when I did the video after, I tried to make sure that that came through because it was a real important aspect of it. But yeah, I think, just relaxing, doing warm-ups. I'd never really did warm-ups until a few months ago, and I've been taking lessons from a guy named Rob Stevenson, and he's like the vocal coach for Kelly Clarkson and Justin Timberlake and all these like mega stars, Charlie Puth, and he is a serious wizard. And so he's given me like some warm ups and exercises to do on a daily basis. And now like I can't really go in and sing or go into the studio without him. And it's really given me an edge. It's one of those things where, if you don't warm up your voice, it's like a muscle. If you go to the gym and you don't do a warm up set, you could pull a muscle.
Hmm.
Your voice is just a muscle, so it's the exact same as that. But if you warm it up, it knows where to go a lot quicker. So it's Stayin Inside. I made sure I do most of my stuff pretty late at night just because my voice is super warm, and that's when I've got the most energy for who knows why. I guess I'm just a musician at heart, but
Right.
but yeah, I think just relaxing and warming up your voice and just practicing and listening back. Honestly, recording is the best thing you can do because a lot of people think, when they're singing along to these records that, man, I'm killing this, right? But you take away that lead vocal on that recording that you're singing along to, and you listen back to just you, it's a whole different animal, man.
Yeah.
It is very humbling.
Let's see, what does that make me think of? Two questions. One is when you're recording yourself, or let me start by saying when you're recording somebody else, sometimes it can feel like the easiest solution is why don't you just do a bunch of passes and get in the flow and then we'll comp it together later. But when I'm recording myself, I find sometimes that's useful, but other times it's much easier to immediately hear a line and then go sing it with intent and then hear it back to know if you got it. What are your thoughts about that? When is it better to do takes and then just comp from that versus, intentionally getting each line just the way you want it?
That's a great question. I think it really depends on the song and what you're going for. With Staying Inside, I basically one or two taked every part of that. And I didn't spend a whole lot of time trying to perfect it. But what I did do was really studied how he sang it. And I've known that record. I know that record like the back of my hand. And that's what made it easy for me to kind of be in that ballpark, imitate his tone, imitate, his vibrato and all the stuff that Barry did so well. But that's kind of like the important thing I think is doing your homework, really plan out how you're going to sing it. But if it's something that hasn't already been done, I like to take it section by section, and you know, then maybe I'll do two takes. I don't want to wear my voice out, so I might do two takes of the first verse, right? And then I'll listen back to it very intently. I'll be like, okay, I didn't like the way this word ended. Okay, I got to keep that in mind. And then I might go in line by line after that and do like four full takes of just line by line stuff. And actually, all of your favorite records, most of them, unless it's like, an oldies record where it's a rock record or whatever, they
You mean
usually
like all
do
the
go
stuff
line
I
by
grew
line,
up
a lot
with?
of stuff. Yeah, I mean, all the stuff I grew up with too. I mean, that's about all I listened to. I didn't really listen to much modern music as a kid, so and my parents, they were big. Like my dad's a huge '80s fan,
Yeah,
huge,
yeah.
and my mom, '80s, '90s. Like that's basically all we listened to. But yeah, I think just trying to take it, line by line, you really are able to pull the most emotion and really get the best comp. Obviously, the thing about comping is making sure that it flows right, because a lot of the time, you'll try to comp a vocal and this one's too soft or this one's too loud, and they don't flow right. It's like they don't work together. So you got to make sure that if you are going to use, the first line of the second take, that the second line of the third take sounds natural after the first line of the second take. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Sometimes that's just a process of luck.
Yeah.
Sometimes, especially a process of, set it and don't mess with your settings.
Yep.
Don't go changing your vocal settings in between every take, or else it's going to be
Oh
more,
no,
more difficult.
that's super important. And very, yeah, that's a great point and something that you never really think about. But for that reason, I almost never touch the knobs on my board, almost never. And I use the same mic, I use the same preamp, every single time, and it really helps to kind of make sure that your sound is consistent. And if I do have to, I've been listening to this record for 4 months and, this line is really bothering me. I really want to go back in and cut that. Like, you don't have to figure out exactly, okay, where was my gain? It's
Right.
like, it's just a done deal.
Yeah. It's a lot easier than trying to do recall photos on every single time you sing a
Oh my
song
goodness.
too, which I do have to do when I'm working with other artists, because every artist is going to need a different kind of setting.
Right.
Generally. Well,
Yep.
that's good advice. And then the warm-up stuff is a great reminder. I've done both versions of that. I've warmed up and I've not warmed up, and I've been amazed at how warm-ups can really help you. And it's fun to go into the studio and just walk around going and all this
Yep.
acting sounding like an idiot. But then there are, I found free ones on YouTube. You just search it and you can find some videos, some guy with a strange accent.
Yep.
You probably know which one I'm talking about. And then, but so here's a question for you. What are the things that are beneficial to not warming up? So what happens to your voice if you just go in and immediately sing without a warm up? Are there any things that you might capture that are really awesome that way?
I think you can capture the same stuff. It's just you're probably going to have to tune a lot more, and you're probably going to have to try and make up for the pitchiness, because when your voice isn't warm, the thing that I notice the most is my pitch after warm-ups is way more accurate, and the slightest bit of being out of tune with a lead vocal is very noticeable. And I really didn't fully understand how difficult it really is to sing lead and sing lead well. I've always really been the keyboard player, backup vocalist guy. And with backup vocals, you're tucked in the mix. You don't have to be perfectly on pitch a lot of the time. As long as it's there and pretty close to the pitch, you're in good shape, and people are going to be like, "Man, I love your background vocals." But if you're the lead singer and you're just slightly off of every single note, it's going to be like nails on a chalkboard. So kind of knowing that difference is really, it's crazy. Once you start really trying to perform some lead vocal tracks and you listen back to yourself, you're like, oh my goodness, my pitch is all over the place. It's like, actually, I'm working on a new cover of Watermelon Sugar that I'm going to be releasing here pretty soon. And that was one of those songs where, I'm trying to sound, in the ballpark of Harry Styles, and it's pretty close to how I would naturally sing it anyway. But even just that song, you think watermelon sugar high, watermelon sugar high. You're like, oh, how hard could that be? And then you go in and you listen to it. You're like, man, wow, I sound awful.
Here, I'll test. I'll test your theory. Watermelon sugar high, watermelon sugar high. All right, cool.
I should have just got you to sing it. Honestly.
I think the rock stars are going to hear that your version of it sounded quite different from my version of it.
Oh man.
Okay, awesome. So warm-ups, pitch control. One of the things that I've noticed is I've learned that it's a lot easier to actually hit the higher notes by relaxing as much as possible and almost just letting my gut just like hang right out there if I need it to.
Yep.
What is that stuff all about? You want to talk about the importance of diaphragm and how that plays into it?
Yeah. And this is something that Rob has actually been helping me out a lot with, because I have a tendency to push, when I'm going for the super high Queen notes, or um, the Bee Gees stuff, for instance. I have a tendency to want to push it out.
Yeah.
Um,
We want to put
but
energy into it, right?
yeah, exactly. You think that, all right, power means I've got to really go all out and scream here. But it actually subtracts from the tone that you're able to get. So sometimes less is more. If you listen to a lot of those great records where they're hitting those high notes, they're not singing as loud as you think they are, or as they sound like they are. Even Freddie Mercury, I mean, he's got a huge voice, don't get me wrong, but some people misinterpret that and try to use too much nasal tone in their voice, or they try to scream. Freddie's not screaming, he's finessing it. He's very controlled. It's open vowels, very open, very deep. It feels deep, it feels full, the tone feels full. But when you try to strain and you try to push up in your vocal register, you're trying to force something that your body doesn't want to happen. Rob actually says, your body, when you're straining, thinks you're trying to swallow, so it'll close off. It'll close off, and that's why you crack. That's why your voice cracks. Is your body is feeling strain, and it thinks you're trying to swallow instead of sing. But if you leave it open and relaxed, your cavities open up and everything, and it just comes out naturally, and you're able to get a fuller tone. You're able to sing higher. You're able to sing with a fuller quality, and it just sounds better overall.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've never heard that described before. That like the reason your voice cracks and it doesn't sound good is because your body thinks it's trying to swallow something. That is something that we do a lot. It's a pretty normal thing to have to do. Sometimes you just need a mic that will stand out in a mix. That's when you need the new BB29 Signature Series from Jay-Z Microphones. The unique single diaphragm golden drop capsule gives the BB29 airy highs and smooth mid-range to help your tracks stand at the front of your mix. Jay-Z's handcrafted, fully discreet microphones come with a 5-year warranty and free shipping to the US. You're hearing my voice on the BB29 right now. Use the limited time coupon ROCKSTARS to get 50% off the BB29 at jzmic.com. Very cool. All right. So, well, let's talk about another aspect of that. So there's tuning. What do you want to say about vocal tuning, the importance of it? Where do we screw that all up? Do you feel like learning these vocal techniques and singing relaxed and just keeping it as natural as possible will give us a better result or a worse result than resorting to tuning the vocal as part of our production?
I'll tell you from experience, it's night and day better result when you are relaxed and you try to get it right before going to tuning. If you rely on tuning, you can very easily end up with a T-Pain sound, which, hey, if that's what you're going for, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
But there are a lot of genres where that's not appropriate. If I did a T-Pain sound on that Stayin Inside, there's just no way people wouldn't be mad at me. It's just not stylistically appropriate. So a lot of the things too, pop, especially right now, which is kind of the genre that I as an artist am in, is very heavily tuned, but it's tuned very transparently. Like it's really transparent. You can hardly even tell it's tuned a lot of the time, but it is very heavily tuned. But even with tuning, you've got to sing it in a way that doesn't sound tuned for them to be able to tune it and it not sound tuned, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, what are some of the tools for tuning, and what are things that make it transparent versus not?
Yeah, Melodyne is really great. That's what I use, and it's really amazing how much you can tweak or whatever. And sometimes, just moving it 10 cents up or down or whatever, it lays it out. I mean, basically, the way it shows up is it shows all the notes you're singing on the keyboard. So you can move it up, you can move it down, or whatever, and it shows the dynamics. It's got pitch drift settings. It's got all of that stuff that you can make it sound really natural. If you don't want to get rid of the vibrato of it, you can leave the vibrato on the tail end, but you can make it, maybe you trail downward with the vibrato, maybe your pitch went down. You can actually raise the end of the note up so that it stays consistent on that note. So it's really amazing. But you still have to be a good singer, no amount of melodyning can make up for a lack of skill in singing.
Are there some sort of go-to procedures for using Melodyne that you find useful? Like, have you learned load the vocal in, and I used to like do this first, but now I don't because that was too much, or anything like that?
Yeah, a big thing is always put it first in your chain. That was a mistake that I made early on, is I would put it at the end of it, and it does not work well. It does not work well at all, because
Right.
what it does is it bounces that vocal down. So any compression that you had or any EQ you had before it is now bounced to the Melodyne, and any pitch correction that you make is now going to affect that compression, and it's just going to make everything sound weird and funny.
Hmm.
Uh, um, but as far as the pitch, or everything that I do now, honestly, I bounce it down. But before I bounce it down, you've really got to make sure that the comp is perfect. So before, Melodyne isn't great with if you have a breath at the end that you want to take out, it's very difficult to take it out with Melodyne. So what I like to do is solo the vocal, make sure that every breath, every single thing is perfectly comped. I'm in love with the vocal without Melodyne before I bounce it down to Melodyne, because if you bounce it down to Melodyne and it's not perfectly comped, all that tuning and everything, you're going to have to redo it, because you're going to have breaths that are in there that shouldn't be. You're going to have stuff that you're trying to cut out. And with Melodyne, it's just not possible. It's very difficult to edit it after the fact. So I would say do all your editing, do all your fades, all the, things in between the lines. Make sure that it sounds like a totally finished comp vocal before you put Melodyne on it and bounce it down.
Okay, good advice. And then, do you use the automation features in Melodyne? Like, do you find it useful to select everything and sort of say, move it 100% to the note, and move the pitch drift 100%? Or is that way too much? Is that a place where we're going to get burned and make it sound too unnatural?
Yeah, like I said before, if you do too much of that, it's very easy. If you turn everything to 100%, it's real easy to make it sound unnatural and very tuned. With background vocals, you can get away with it. I've done that sometimes where I'll move it to 80%, but even still, you got to go in and check it, because a lot of the time it'll tune it to the wrong note. Especially if you're a
Hmm.
little bit pitchy on the background part. So I like to go in and hand tune line by line, even with my background vocals, just to make sure that it's done right. It's very time consuming, but it's super worthwhile. Like, it's very worth it, especially on the lead vocal. With the background vocals, sometimes I won't even tune them, because they'll be, like I said, close enough to where it's like, all right, cool, it sounds good. But with the lead vocal, I almost never do any sort of overall tuning settings or anything like that, because I want it to sound transparent. I want it to sound good, and I want it to sound natural.
Right on. Okay, cool. Good tip. All right. So let's see. Talk a little bit about the process of making the rest of Stayin Inside. So you program the drums. Did you end up playing all the parts yourself, or did you? Because in the video, you're playing with the band, and I want to get a little bit of insight into how you put the video together too. But how did it
Yeah.
work to add all the musical parts?
So I basically finished just about every bit of. I left it, without guitar and without bass, right? Because those are the two things that I don't trust myself with. The horns I can fake, the strings I can do, and all the vocal stuff, obviously. And then I had Superior Drummer, so I had that Superior Drummer loop, and I knew I needed a guitar and I knew I needed bass, and I just so happened to have two of my best friends that are really great at both of those instruments. Alex Kilroy is an amazing guitar player and actually an incredible singer as well. And and then Adrian Laird is one of my best friends from North Texas. We actually were in the jazz program at North Texas, the master's program out there together. And so they're just both powerhouse musicians. I mean, they just don't get any better than them. So I called them up and I said, hey guys, I got this goofy video idea. Would you just do me a favor and just lay down your tracks and send it over to me? And they were like, oh yeah, and they kind of laughed at it, like, oh whatever, yeah, sure, man, no worries, I'd be happy to do that. And they were very nice about it, and didn't make fun of me too much. But yeah, then so they recorded. They both have home setups, and that's really, I'm seeing a lot of that these days. Is you know you record it at home, you send it over to the producer guy, and he does what he wants with it. And that's kind of the approach that we did. And so I mixed and mastered it, and so I sent him the track with just the drums and the vocals and all the keyboard parts and the horn parts and the string parts. So they were listening to basically a finished record minus bass and guitar. And then I got them to lay it down. When Adrian got done with the bass, he sent it to me. I bounced down a new mix with his bass on it, sent it to Alex. Alex laid all his guitar tracks down, and before we knew it, we had a finished recording.
So it's interesting because, we are in an era now where it is possible to kind of share sessions, and, Pro Tools has collaboration features built into it. But still, I hear people always defaulting to the simplest solution, which is just send an MP3 mix of something right over to somebody else. They drag it in, add their part, send it back. And, it's just a reminder that simple is often better because it gets things done. And also, I wonder if there's a thing about that where just the act of pre-mixing stuff, there's a commitment element to it that seems to work well for people. Like you committed the bass level and stuff to the track so that by the time that Alex got it, it already had a sound. He didn't sort of have to re-arrive at what the mix might be or the sound of it.
Yep. I always love, especially when I send it to clients, I want my rough mixes to sound like a record. I want them to listen to it and be like, "Oh my gosh, this already sounds great." Because I know that that's if I were a client and I was hiring a producer or a mixing engineer to do something and they sent me a rough mix that sounded awful, I'd be like, I'm a little worried about this final product. I might want to go with somebody else. And I wanted my friends too to be proud of it and to realize, okay, this is actually going to be really cool, and it's actually does sound just like the record, and it's going to be funny, and I wanted them to believe in it.
What about the level of that mix that you send that somebody's going to overdub to? Have you ever sort of grappled with, does this mix need to be super hot like a finished master level, or does it need to be at a lower volume? I've found myself sometimes bringing in the reference track, and then the first thing I have to do is take the fader and turn it down to a sort of what would have been a normal working level if we were tracking with musicians, for example.
Yeah, that's a great point. I always just master it, and then they can always turn it down if they want to or need to. But I've found that if I at least just master it or throw a few plugins on the master fader, a little compression, multi-band compressor, and a limiter just to make sure that it sounds radio volume. A lot of the time they'll listen to it on their phone. So I don't want them to listen to it on their phone and barely be able to hear it,
Right.
before they go in and track. So for that reason, I like to just go ahead and master it. They can always turn it down, but it's sometimes really hard to turn it up.
Yeah, that's a good point, that if they're going to start by needing to get excited about it and listen to it and, in the normal world, then you want it to have that right level. Have you ever run into any issues regarding timing with something like that, where the bounced mix somehow has a shifted timing or a delay on it that they play to, and then that comes back and bites you? Or is that mostly not something to worry about?
It does happen, especially with not super experienced musicians, or maybe they're not used to recording at home, and they don't know how to bounce a track or consolidate the track. Because the biggest thing is you're making sure it lines up, right? So you want
Mhm.
it. I usually try to have at least a 2 or 4 bar count in at the top and include that on the track, with the click on the track. That way it's real easy for them to just say, okay, I know exactly what to expect. And I know, I don't have to go in and change my metronome or, go in and turn it up or down or whatever. So I like to just keep it simple for them. So I'll send them, my bounced mix with a click count in. And that's basically how I do it.
Okay, cool. So they don't even necessarily need to know what the tempo is and have their session tempo perfectly aligned. They probably do, but it's not required because they can just overdub to what you send.
Yeah, I've just found that that's easier. It's the less work you can make them do, usually the happier they'll be. And that's just, I mean, that's with me too. If anybody sends me a track and they're like, oh, hey, set the tempo to 75 BPM and it's a 6 bar count in, and I've got to program all that. It's just, it prevents me from being able to focus on the music and just going for the take. Because I've got to do all that setup before I do it. So I think it just makes things easier if you just do it all for them, bounce it down. But then, they also, I've found that educating them on how to consolidate the file before they have the opportunity to send it back is really helpful, because a lot of the time they just won't know. They don't know what the standard is, or maybe they haven't done that before. And you
Right.
just say, hey, are you familiar with the process of just consolidating your file? Just highlight it, consolidate it to make sure it's the exact same length as the track I sent you. And then that way, when I load it into my session, I'll know exactly where the starting point is. Because that's the
So
biggest issue.
yeah, that's a good reminder. And there are tools that we can use out there that sometimes make that easier. I use one called Loom, which is it's an app you put on your Mac, and then you can make a little screen share video, and you can talk on your mic and make a video. So if you were trying to show, somebody else how to manage that with their session, that might be a really easy way to show them, is just, send them a little video clip where you're like, this is what it looks like. And they go, oh, I
No,
get it.
that's really cool, and I should probably do that, because I end up, being on FaceTime trying to walk them through it, for 30 minutes. It
Yeah.
can get time consuming if you do that with a bunch of clients or a bunch of people. So I don't know.
Right on, man. A gold bar should be kept safe in a vault because it's valuable, but it could be replaced if it was ever lost. One of your songs or recordings, on the other hand, is worth more than gold because it's one of a kind. It's you, and if it was ever lost, it could never be replaced. So wouldn't you feel better knowing your music was safe? This is why I like to have a dedicated system drive, audio work drive, virtual instrument storage drive, cloud storage, and an extra large backup drive in my studio computer. And when I'm finished with the project, I move it onto a dedicated pair of external drives for archiving. Thanks to OWC, I can count on my drives being super fast, reliable, and secure so that I can work quickly and sleep soundly at night knowing my music is safe. I want your music to be safe too. Discover the best options for storage and backup for your studio from OWC at macsales.com/rockstars. Have you ever wished you could remove the click track bleed from a singer's vocal mic, the sound of shuffling feet from a full choir, or clicking noises from the valves of an otherwise brilliant trumpet solo? These are just some of the incredible things I've been able to clean up, edit, or remove from a recording using the magic of iZotope RX. Great for mixing with a collection of plugins for your DAW to manage plosives, clicks, S's, noise, buzz, reverb, breaths, and even guitar fret squeaks with the set it and forget it simplicity that lets you focus on your creativity in the studio while you let iZotope handle the audio challenges. If you've ever wanted to truly feel like a magician in the studio, then iZotope RX is your magic wand. Go to iZotope.com/rockstars in the show notes and use the code ROCK10 to get an additional 10% off your first purchase. Hey, Rockstars, we're back now for the jam session. My guest today is Brent McCollough, joining us from his studio across town in Nashville. And we're going to keep talking about making viral videos, making killer records in home studios, and basically just come up with a whole bunch of insights into how we can make better records. So you ready to jam, Brent?
Oh yeah,
All
I'm
right,
ready.
dude. All right. So we'll sort of wrap up talking about making Stayin Inside here, but you got the tracks out to everybody. They sent them back to you. Great bass player, just like great groove and feel. And I love, he's like got his pajamas on and one foot's up on the table right in front of the camera. And then Alex, your guitar player, is just hilariously awesome because he looks like he's got this expression on his face where he just looks like so genuinely happy to be on the video.
Oh man,
I feel like
he is one of the happiest people I know.
yeah, it's like he just got us. It's like everybody just said surprise, and it's his birthday, and then they start rolling the camera, and he's playing the parts.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, no, he sent me that video. I was like, man, you're a legend.
So, Rockstars, a reminder that, of course, the video's in the playlist in the show notes. So just click through and you can go watch that and listen to the other records and videos that Brent is making. And we'll keep going. So once you got this stuff recorded, what do you have to say about the process of actually making a video to go with that, editing it together? I think we all know that there's some level of, video's fun to make, first of all, but there's also can feel like, we probably should be making a video to go with this song. If we're making music, trying to get it out there, what did you learn about the video process to make it easy and work well? And, where will we get stuck?
That's a great question. The video part, I was just trying to get creative, and I made a few different versions of it, but I knew I wanted it to like be a home video, a home style. I didn't want it to look like this super produced, like high budget thing. I wanted it to look like it was, just three guys just chilling at home making this thing,
Mhm.
So I just got them all to record with their phone. We all recorded the videos with our iPhones, and they sent them over to me. And then I initially started. I was going. It was just me, and then it was just Adrian, and it was just Alex, and it just got to that point where I was like, it's overdoing it. It doesn't work. I want to be able to watch everybody and make it look like it's just like a band. We're just all jamming in our own spaces and having fun. And so I was like, I wonder if there's a way that I could just put it all on the same screen. And so I just played around with it until I was able to fit us all on, on one screen. And that was the biggest challenge. Is I wanted it. And honestly, they didn't know. I didn't tell them that their whole take was going to be, on video. I mean,
Right. They're like, that part where I was picking my nose, I think you're going to take that out.
exactly. Yeah. That you think, okay, I'm going to send this video and then they're going to chop it up. They'll probably use bits and pieces. But, I went and looked at both of their videos. I was like, man, these are great. And I think people would find it more interesting if they could just watch all of us at the same time. And not to mention, I mean, Adrian's dog was in there. And it
That's
was,
right.
I mean, that was like the highlight of the video. I mean, all these comments were like, oh my gosh, that dog, and it's little things like that make it feel, genuine. And it was genuine. I mean, he was just eating his bone, just minding his own business. And it's so funny. I mean, he in the shot, he's bigger than Adrian is, but
That's
it just
real
makes
funny.
it even funnier that it's like, okay, this was an accident, but hey, whatever. And he just sent it over.
So how do you
yeah,
do that? You just like, so this would have been typical video production where the music's already recorded, you press play, and then you just sort of airplay along with it and just shoot a video of yourself, and that works pretty great. Are there challenges to that? Are there
oh yeah.
ways for us to make that look wrong?
Yeah, there are. If you're too stiff or you're too, if you overthink it, I'm an overthinker. I know I am. I know a lot of us mixing engineers and audiophiles are. We like everything to be perfect, and sometimes you just got to let go of that, especially with video. Like it's not going to be perfect. It's just not. And the sooner you accept that and just appreciate that, the more success you're going to have, and the more videos you're going to be able to crank out, and the less headaches you're going to have in the long run too.
Mm-hmm. All right. And then the iPhone tip was great. Just use your iPhone. What
Yeah.
about that? I mean, are there things we need to know about getting an iPhone video to look better and not worse?
Um,
Lighting, for example.
Yeah, lighting is everything. I've got these 3 lights, and they're just big LED lights. They're not that big, but, I think they were about $150, but it's amazing, it really does make a difference. Good lighting is everything. It doesn't matter what camera you've got. If your lighting is off and looks bad, it's gonna look bad.
Just like something you
Lighting is
order
the most
off
important thing.
Amazon or something like that?
Yeah, I think these are Dazzne is the brand that I got, Dazzne, and they're really great. They're cheap and they work amazing. I got a 3-pack of them because I didn't know how many I needed, and I was a total amateur with lighting. But a lot of time when you've got the overhead lighting, it's just very unflattering.
Mhm.
It brings out um, the top of your head is lit up like a Christmas tree and you can't even really see your face, and the lighting is just not ideal. So people want to be able to see you and want to be able to see imagine like a spotlight on a singer on the stage. I mean, they're not going to have it right above their head. They're going to have it out in front so that it lights them up, so that people can see them nice and clear. So
Yeah, it's a
it's an
good
important
reminder.
thing.
Even when you do see that top-down spotlight and the little circle of light around somebody, they still have a spotlight in front pointing right at them, right?
Exactly.
Otherwise, you can't see them.
Exactly.
And then a reminder, a lesson I learned was just, it's one of the reasons why I do my unboxing videos outside, because outdoor lighting is just makes everything clear and sharp on an iPhone shot and easier to do.
Yep.
As soon as you go inside and the light is sort of what would feel like normal lighting inside typically feels like low lighting for something like an iPhone, right?
Absolutely. And the lower light you have, I mean, that's why it's always good to have more light than less light, because the lower light you have, the more grain you're going to get in the video. And grain is what the dead giveaway is, for low quality cameras. But
Mhm.
even the iPhones are great. I would say don't use the selfie side, unless you're doing something like I did, like Staying Inside. I think some of the guys might have used their selfie side, but you got to keep in mind that I had to fit all of those in the video. So, because I shrunk the videos down, it's going to look higher quality. But if you use the full screen for those selfie side of the cameras, you're going to see all that grain and you're going to see all the
Right.
inconsistencies in it.
Yeah, so that's a good tip. That's a good reason for doing that grid of videos
Yeah.
like you did. Now, what are the tools that you need for something like that? Did you use what do you use for your video editing, for example?
I used Final Cut Pro, and that's my favorite. I haven't really played with a whole lot else other than iMovie, and I am a MacBook Pro user. So
Mhm.
Final Cut Pro is really great though, and it's amazing too because it's got an audio auto align feature on it.
Mhm.
So you create the multicam clip, and there are so many YouTube videos. Honestly, every time I make a video, I have to go and look up how to do this or how to do that on YouTube. But there's so many free, great YouTube videos. You might have to weed through some bad ones, but there are really great resources if you dig for it
Yeah,
that
and
teach you how to do all that.
I've found that the auto align is great when it works, and then it's good to get in the habit, kind of like Melodyne. It's good to get in the habit of just
Mhm.
zoom in, and you may want to adjust it a frame this way or
Absolutely.
that. And one thing I think for the rock stars to know about video, which is a little different than audio. In audio, you could take two audio pieces and you can just shift them over by a few samples to line them up. In video, when you're moving the video around, you're doing it a frame at a time, which is like I forgot what it's a
Real
millisecond or
small.
something. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like being in grid mode where sometimes you're like, man, why I can only get it before this or after this. I can't figure out how to line them up perfectly. I think
Yep.
there is a trick for lining it up perfectly, but you got to get a little bit ninja with it. So
Yep.
just stuff you run into. What about
Yeah.
the YouTube side of doing this? I mean, you've done a number of videos now. What have you learned about like, do you have a YouTube channel you're trying to grow, or any of those things that you've learned about how to upload this stuff and make it work well?
Yeah. I do have a YouTube channel, and I've been working on growing it. Staying Inside was obviously my most successful video to date. But I've got a lot of other covers on there. I'm continuing to crank out some more videos. I'm actually Like I mentioned earlier, I've got a Watermelon Sugar cover in the works right now. But it is important because in today's day and age, audio, and it's unfortunate, but audio really almost doesn't exist without video now. Just because videos are everything, and if you've got an amazing song and you don't have a video to go with it, it's a shame. But a lot of the time, that song, unless it just blows up on Spotify, just it won't be heard by a lot of people. And if you have a video, a lot of the time, you don't need a fancy video. Honestly, like Stayin Inside was a super simple video, but it sounded like a record. And I think that's why it went viral, is because it was apparent that it was a low budget thing, that we were just goofing off, that we were having fun. It was an entertaining video and something that people could relate to, sing along to, laugh at. And if you can just do something that moves people one way or the other, I mean, it could just, as long as there's emotion and there's relatability in there, I think it can really go a long way. If you've got a song, I made a music video for myself. Actually, got my girlfriend is starring in it, and her sister filmed it, and it turned out great. It's yours. You can check it out on my YouTube
Yeah,
channel. But
it's in the playlist. Yeah, it's beautiful. You guys are at the beach and everything.
oh yeah, it was a great time, and it's obvious that it's not $1 million budget music video, but I think that almost makes it better because it's more relatable, and there's no shame in that.
What are some well, so actually let's talk about this. So one of the first videos that you made, we go back, I think it's back to 2010 or something or earlier. There's a video in the playlist called Sunday Morning, and it was your production from your college dorm room. Talk a little bit about doing that. Was that an early video for you? What's the story behind that?
Oh yeah, it's crazy to think that that was already 10 years ago. So I guess I think I was 18 at the time. I just moved into my dorm, and I was getting familiar with Pro Tools, and obviously I'd been producing some things for me and my kid bands and all that stuff, and done a lot of mixing and mastering in junior high and high school, and had just been playing around with it. So when I got to college, I wanted to start making videos, and I was just messing around. It was like one of those things. I loved Maroon 5, and Sunny Morning was one of my favorite songs by them. So I was like, I wonder if I can recreate this. And so I had, two keyboards and a mic. It was like a Samson CL8, which is still one of my favorite mics that I have to this day. But I didn't have much. I had a little inbox interface and very minimal setup. I was like, all right, how close can I get with this to recreating Sunny Morning, which was one of my favorite songs at that time. And I was really like pleasantly impressed when I looked back at that. I was like, I actually did pretty good. It's pretty close. I think it could pass to like the amateur year. I definitely was in the ballpark, but it just goes to show that that you can do a lot with very little if you just know what you're doing and you take the time to really learn your craft.
Yeah. Now, I noticed that you talk. Well, yours is an original song of yours, right? And then, but you've also done covers. So what I've noticed about it is if you, couple of things. One is I had a roommate back in college, Matt Mahaffey, who's been on the show too. And he talked about, he called it, demoing songs, because this was before video. But he would, he got the advice, go take your favorite record, reproduce it in your studio, because you'll learn so much about it. Same thing you shared, which is great advice. And I need to do more of that myself. But also, if you were going to put something on YouTube, when you do the cover, now you get this searchability factor, and people will come find your video because they're looking for that song.
Yep.
And, people can also learn the song just by watching you perform it.
Yeah, and it's really important too, because if you have covers of stuff that's similar to your original music, it's very likely that if they like that song, they can check out your original music, and they'll probably like your original music too. And a lot of my songs are in that same vein of Maroon 5, or Louis Capaldi was the kind of the one of the influences for yours. And when you do covers like that, it can really translate into building your following as well, and it can help you grow while you're paying homage to your favorite artists or your favorite recordings, and you're actually building your own following as a side effect.
Yeah, there's a good story about that. Um, I think it was when I bought my daughter a ukulele many years ago. It didn't really take. She doesn't really like the ukulele that much, but but I did buy her one. And then I thought like, oh, we need to like, see some videos on how ukuleles played and stuff. And so I searched for it. And then there was this artist named Julia Nunez that came up, and she made videos where she'd do these cover songs, and they were super homespun, just like in a dorm room, singing on the computer mic kind of thing with a
Mhm.
ukulele, and they completely went viral, and they were blowing up. And then I think like with a year later or something like that, I was at Bonnaroo doing my hay bale studio, and we get all these artists that come in. We might get like up to 40 artists in 4 days. And I'd look down the list, and there was her name on the list. She had
No
blown up so
way.
much that she was now on the road touring and was playing festivals and was at Bonnaroo and coming into our studio. And she came in and sang all her original songs. So I thought that was like
There you go.
so cool to see that actually come to fruition like that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Justin Bieber got his start making a cappella covers. I mean, he didn't even have a band or anything. He was just like chilling in his room, and he would sing to karaoke track or just sing whatever. And it really helps. There's so many success stories of people starting out like that, and it really goes a long, long way.
That's wild. What are some videos that you would like to make? Do you have any sort of visions for like, oh, it'd be so much fun to do this kind of video?
Um, Yeah, I've got a bunch of those kind of ideas. Right now, the watermelon sugar video is like the one that I'm really looking forward to the most, and it's gonna be formatted kind of like Staying Inside, but it's not gonna be a parody. It's just gonna be like me recreating it and just singing it and covering it. Which it'll be interesting to see how that one does. I don't have as high hopes of Staying Inside. I'm not expecting that kind of level of success with this one, but it'll still be fun and it'll be cool. And who knows? It might blow up or go viral or whatever if it's one of the better watermelon sugar covers out there. But I definitely want to get more involved into like high quality video editing. Like Kurt Hugo Schneider has so many great videos, and I've actually been studying his stuff, and
Hmm.
I'd love to do some more stuff like that. I've got a lot of loop pedal videos, and I really I think that's gonna be kind of my way to grow my following or whatever, because that's like the sucker video that I did, for instance,
Yep. Yep.
where I'm playing all the instruments and I'm doing kind of the one man band thing. I feel like that's I mean, that's how I am in the studio. All the records that I produced, I played everything, I sang everything, I mixed everything, I mastered everything, recorded everything, and it's all just kind of a home studio thing. So I think it's very true to who I am as a creator. And I'd like to collaborate a little more, but I think I really just love making music on my own too.
Talk about making Sucker. I mean, so it's this wonderful video, and Rockstars again. It's in the playlist for you to check out. But you start off, and actually, I forgot what your first instrument was. Oh, it was hand claps, I think.
Yeah.
And then that starts to create a loop, and then you're singing, and then you play some guitar and some bass and keyboards, and then you hit the snare drum. Now that's in there, and you don't see it, but I assume there's sort of an engineer off camera who's helping grab the loops for you, or maybe not. Maybe it was all done
No,
in the mix
so
back.
it's a lot harder than it seems, because actually every single one of those loops and everything was automated um, using Ableton Live. And so I had it set. So you got to know exactly when you're going to record each thing. Like every bar is planned. Um, so I've got it set, to record for that mic, to record on the clap track in this bar, in this 4 beats, or these 8 beats or whatever, and then it would record the claps. It would move it to the clap track, and then I could set it to loop, play, or record, play, or stop. And so I automated like every single thing, like the snare mic. I automated it just to record in that one bar because I didn't want it picking up all the room noise from the other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So every single instrument that I played, like the keyboard, when I recorded the keyboard parts, I had it automated to record just in those 2 bars or wherever I was playing. And while I'm trying to sing and remember the lyrics and do all this stuff. So it's serious multitasking. People don't really understand how complicated it can get, but it's a lot of work, a lot of planning, a lot of rehearsal. And also, like, I didn't have a drum kit to practice with. So that take was actually the second run through I had. And it just, I thought I bombed it, and I brought it back home, and, my girlfriend was over, and I said, I feel like a failure. I got to go back tomorrow and try to get a good take. And anyway, she was like, well, just play it for me, and let's see what it looks like. And
Mm-hmm.
so I played it, and she was like, what's wrong with that? I was like, there were a couple of like mistakes. She was like, where? I was like, she was like, you just need to post that. Honestly, don't go back in the studio and do it again. Like that's exactly what you needed. I was like, okay, and so I trusted her judgment on it. And honestly, like, after I went in and started mixing the tracks, obviously it bounced down and everything. But after I started mixing the tracks, I was like, you know what, you were right. It really is. It's fine. It's good, and I was happy with it.
Yeah, and nearly 5,000 other people thought the same thing because it's got a growing number of views on the video, and it is really great performance, and it's very cool to see that. And there's a part of me that's like, how did he do that? How does that loop work right there? Where's it coming
Yeah.
from? And Rockstars, it's a single camera shot, so the camera just starts in one place and then slowly moves around, watching you do this. I think, right? I don't remember if there
Yep.
was an edit in there, but so it's
No
clear that
edit.
it's a live performance.
And that's what I wanted, because anytime you cut to another camera or you've got something like that, it's a dead giveaway, or it could be misinterpreted that it's not a single take.
Right, right.
There is room for cheating. And I wanted it to be obvious to the people watching that it was a single take, loop pedal performance. And I think that's kind of the more, I don't know, impressive side of things. It shows like a skill level that is required to try and pull that off in one take. It's a lot of work.
Well, the single camera shot kind of holds our attention too, where we're just focused on you the whole time. If you still have that session, boy, Rockstars, drop a comment in and let us know if you want Brent to make a video on how he did all that with the automation at Ableton. That'd probably be really, really cool to see,
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I got to check and see if I've still got it, but that's a great idea.
Yeah. I know that I've explored live looping stuff in the past with Ableton, and I feel like I got a little ways into it, and then I was just like, it just got complicated and I wasn't sure. Also, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So, what was your process of preparing for this? Did you record it first, or did you take the song and you sort of programmed it out? So you laid an outline, then you're like, okay, now how can I play all these parts? And then, like, what's the backward engineering to come up with something like that?
Yeah, a lot of thought. Honestly, brainstorming was 99% of it. Planning, trying to figure out, okay, what do I want to add and when am I going to add it? And a lot of it was just paper. I would go, okay, intro, I'm going to record this. I'm going to record this. This will be a good foundation. And then I'll, add the snare right here. And I was just trying to plan out the song and see, okay, when does it make sense to add a guitar part and a bass part or whatever.
And sing simultaneously and have your vocals sound great.
Well, yeah, that was quite the challenge.
Yeah.
I really couldn't believe that, the second take was the keeper, the one that I ended up going with, because, that there was actually Elise Truve, I think is her name, but she has a great video, and I kind of emulated that a little bit of um, what you won't do, you do for love. I'm blanking on the name of that song, but
Okay.
anyway,
All right.
but yeah, she does that, and it's a mashup. But it's really great, and it's like a one shot. It's kind of like a loop pedal performance, but she's like up walking around and stuff, and then she goes over to the drum kit, and she's got mics and stuff. But she said that, and hers was a lot more complicated than mine, but she said she recorded it over 30 or 40 times, like
Wow.
30 or 40 takes before she got the take that she was happy with. So I was going in with that mindset, like, all right, it's probably going to take me 50 to 100 takes, to try and pull this off, because it was the first time I'd ever really tried doing it. And like I said, I couldn't really practice with the drum kit. And it's so easy with loops. Like, people think, oh, yeah, okay, I can play it perfectly for a bar. But man, if you don't nail it in that bar, you're going to hear it for the
Yeah.
next 3 minutes, and it's going to drive you nuts, and it's going to drive everyone else nuts if it's not perfectly on that grid.
Yeah.
So
I think you did a sort of a keyboard solo in one part. That's probably the only part where you could get away with kind of flubbing it if you wanted to, right? Because it wasn't
yeah,
looped.
yeah, yep.
Bill Cheney, the founder of Spectra 1964, kept getting the same question from customers. What DI should they use with the 610 series comp limiters? After trying to recommend various DIs while making excuses for the way they all sounded, he realized that the solution was to create the perfect direct input box himself. Thus, the BBDI Passive Direct Box from Spectra 1964 was born. By using Spectra design concepts and standards, the BBDI provides a low distortion and flat response design that is unequaled by any standard or measure. The absence of harmonic distortion and articulation of signal detail is readily apparent. This is all done with a passive transformer type design that will provide years of trouble-free operation. Simply put, the BBDI is the best sounding bass DI I've ever used. It'll move your pant leg. No hype, no color, just pure tone at Spectra1964.com. If your goal was to climb Mount Everest, you would hire a Sherpa to guide you to the summit. If you wanted to sail around the world, you would hire a seasoned sea captain for a safe voyage. And if you wanted to try skydiving, you wouldn't just jump out of an airplane without being strapped to an expert, right? So why would you send off your mix for mastering without knowing that it was ready first? Wouldn't it be great to have a professional mastering engineer with a trained ear to guide you through the final stages of mixing? Brian Murphy is your trusted guide at soundporter.com. Home of the iterative mastering process, where you get to interact with a professional mastering engineer who listens to what you want and will give you mix feedback to help you get your mix ready for mastering. Contact Brian now for a free mix review and mastering demo so that you can hear it before you buy it at soundporter.com. Okay, cool. What about the camera shot? So now you had somebody else there shooting. What are some challenges you learned about that single camera shot, so that it's it's great, so that it doesn't mess up, and so that it's interesting?
Yeah, so Ryan Yeomans actually was the guy that engineered it, and he kind of like hooked everything up and made sure it was recording and all of that. And we used my laptop actually in his studio. The Amber Sound is his studio in Nashville, but it's kind of like a home studio, but it's a really nice home studio. And yeah, as far as that goes with the camera work, he actually, I bought the gimbal. The gimbal is the thing, for those of you guys that don't know, it's the thing that holds the camera up and it keeps it a steady shot. So you can move your arm around or whatever, but it keeps you can
Keeps it
raise your
smooth.
arm or lower. Yeah, it keeps it very smooth. And I got the gimbal for that reason.
Was this an
And
iPhone or was this a
no,
fancy camera?
I actually used my Canon Rebel T3i was the
Okay.
camera I used, and it's like a $300 camera, but it's really good. It's a DSLR. It's just not great in low light, and it kind of was low light, so I actually ended up having to touch it up after to get a little bit of the graininess out. So lesson learned there.
Mm-hmm.
But he did an amazing job, and he's an audio guy. He doesn't really do much video, but he really killed it. I mean, he did a great job with the video. I would have never known. And he actually went into the studio, hit record, and you can actually see him coming out of that, and I was counting down and he was counting down because we had like an 8-bar count
Yeah.
for him to have the camera ready, go in, and then it was go time. And it's like no pressure,
Yeah, and you can hear you guys going like 8, 7, 6.
Yeah.
Yeah, at the beginning it was great.
I actually wanted to cut that out, but yeah, like actually Taylor, my girlfriend, was like, "Yeah, you should leave that in there." It's kind of
No, it's cool. It sort of sets up the little bit of excitement for something's about to happen.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
keeps it fun. You guys are sort of, like you said, you're sort of smiling about it.
Right. Yep. I mean, we really had a blast doing it, and it took like all day to kind of set everything up and wire everything, make sure everything was routed right, and it was crazy, but it was definitely worth it. And I want to do another. Yeah, to answer your original question, I definitely want to do more of those.
Yeah,
because those were a lot of fun.
Thank God you only had to do 2 takes then after all the work.
No kidding.
Let's talk a little bit about the home studio situation. Yep. You talked about starting with an M-Box. You probably have a different studio setup now. What does your studio look like? What kind of stuff surrounds you that you feel like I've got the tools I need to be able to make the records I want?
Yep. So I actually have a PreSonus Studio Live 16 channel that I use as my interface and my mixer, but I don't really use it as a mixer. I literally just use it for the preamps pretty much, just to make sure that, I had 16 channels. And that way, if I ever needed to go somewhere and record a drummer or anything where I've got to have 16 channels, I've got what I need and I don't have to worry about it. And then every other time, I've got more than enough channels that I know what to do with. And also the preamps on here are really good. They may not be like state of the art, but they're really good quality. And, I can't really tell that much of a difference.
What's some of the stuff that's cool about the Studio Live? So that's an interface that's a mixer as well.
Yep.
What are some features that it's got that come in kind of handy?
So it's FireWire. It goes right on your computer, and it's so easy to just dial up, really good mix. You can actually mix with the PreSonus, but I just like to mix in the box just because, that's what I've done my whole life. And I'm just more comfortable with Pro Tools. But it's really good. And honestly, it's just got a lot of inputs. It's got, I never really run out of inputs or have to worry about that. And then for live performance stuff, I mean, you could literally take it for a gig and you can run sound, you get a couple of speakers or whatever, and you can do the sound with it. And it's got amazing presets, amazing reverbs, delays, compressors, limiters, equalizers, gates, you name it, it's got it.
So you can record through some EQ and compression on the way into the DAW.
You can. I just don't like doing that personally, just because, like I said, I'm a totally in the box guy, which it might change over the years, but for right now, I like to stick to what I know and what I really. I don't want to add some EQ and it not be perfect, and then I want to try to change it after the fact and I ruin a great take for it.
Right. Yeah. If you're going to focus on the music first, if you can adjust that later. And then, so it sounds like you have an earlier version, Rockstars. Of course, I have the Studio Live 64S, and that is, now they don't have FireWire on them, but it has a USB output and an Ethernet cable for AVB, which will go into the computer as well. But it's very versatile and it's very cool. And I don't know if yours had that, but now they put in a what do you call it? A SD card, so you can pop that in. You could actually record. You could just have the mixer and pop an SD card in and record the band straight to an SD card, and then pop that into the computer later to sort of unfold your session and start mixing.
Wow, that's killer. That is really killer.
Yeah, you wouldn't do punching in and stuff. You just sort of capture the live performance, but a very handy thing. Okay, cool. So you got that. Awesome. And then also you mentioned sort of mixing in the box. With the newer versions of the Studio Live, of course, you can control the DAW. So you can actually put it in DAW mode, and now the faders will control the faders.
No way.
Yeah, and panning and stuff like that.
I might have to upgrade. You might have just talked me into it.
It's pretty cool. I mean, it will control the faders and the mutes, and I can select, faders and mutes for Pro Tools. If you use it with something like Studio Live, you get a little more control of plugins and things like that up at the fat channel area. And PreSonus was one of the, maybe they weren't the first ones, but they introduced what's called the fat channel, which was very cool, where it's like, oh, now you've got this one center section that's like EQ and compression and gating and reverb sends. And so you can kind of manipulate sounds right there, which is really cool.
Yep. No, it's really great. And it's just so easy. You just select the channel and you can add whatever you want to it.
And then what about microphone choice for you? I mean, do you have a full collection of mics now? Did you find that you still like having just a few because it works so well?
Yeah, I mean, I've got the bare minimum, honestly. I've got the SM58. I've got the Samson CL8 that I actually used in the Sunday morning video, and I've had it for so long, and it's just been a tried and true mic for me. It is a little thin, but I'm able to kind of work around it and thicken it up a little bit in post. But the most recent addition to my studio, and the one that I'm talking on right now, is the Lewitt. It's a Lewitt 440 Pure, and it's actually the LCT 440 Pure, and it's really great. Like it's the closest thing I've ever really heard to having like a super top notch mic for under $300. I mean, it's got such body to it and transparency, and it's an amazing microphone.
Right.
It really is.
So Lewitt has these cool features where you can hit the switches on front of them, and the phantom sort of gives it power to the mic and lights up, so you can see what your cutoff and pickup pattern and pad is. Your high pass filter. What does that one do? That the 440, or is that sort of
no?
It's
kind of it's just a normal condenser mic. But it's really, I mean, the quality is absurd. I mean, it's really great. I actually just used it on my latest single, Here With Me, that I released last Friday.
Awesome.
And I've used it on several clients, and they're like, "Oh my goodness," I mean, it's really the closest you can get to like a U47 that I've ever heard in this kind of price range. It's
okay, cool, man, insane. Awesome. So for you, the microphones are primarily for recording vocals and maybe some acoustic guitar or something like that. Are you doing a lot more overdubs on your stuff as well?
Yeah. I mean, I really use it for just about everything. And I've got some 58s and 57s. I usually use 57s for electric guitar because it's, about all I got. I could use this. I haven't tried the Lewitt on a electric guitar, but I'm sure it would capture it just great. But I've got the pretty basic setup. It's nothing too fancy, but I know what I've got and I know kind of how to use it. And I work with the strengths of my setup.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk about some of the instruments and the way you like to record them, or just stuff you've learned about it.
Mm-hmm.
You talked a little bit about drums, and you pointed out that Superior Drummer is great for that. Do you sometimes record acoustic drums, and have you got some stuff you want to talk about related to that, or whether it's not, something about the mic, maybe it's something about what you do to the drums once they're in the computer to get them exciting? Any tips you want to share about making your drums sound great?
The biggest thing is make sure you have enough inputs, because I ran into that problem the first time I tried to record drums. I thought I can make it work with 4 inputs, and you have to be so good as an engineer to make that work that it's just not really realistic. Having no close mics and just, 2 overheads and a kick mic, or something like that. It's just not going to ever really sound 100% pro unless you really are great. I mean, you could probably pull it off, but there's no way I could, you gotta be like really, really great engineer. So I would say, make
how
sure
many
you have
inputs
enough.
do you want?
I've got 16 and usually I can get it done. I would say have at least 8 for a drum kit,
Yeah. Okay.
Ideally you have 10 or 11. And honestly, you're probably more of an expert on that, because I don't record drums a whole lot. When I do want real drums on a record, I hire John Spittle to do it, and he's actually the drummer for Trace, but he's got an amazing home studio set up, and then he just sends them over to me. So a lot of the time I don't really fool with it, but the few times I have recorded full drums, I use my PreSonus, and I went somewhere that sounded good naturally, whether it be a studio space or whatever. And honestly, that'd probably be the most cost effective way to do it, is just go get a drummer, pay the money to rent a legit studio space, and, just bite the bullet, or, include it in the cost of what you quote your client and say, hey, look, to record the drums or record the whole band, this is going to be X amount of dollars for this amount of time. And that way you can really get it done right. And then they just send you the files. But if you do want to do it yourself, I think having a lot of inputs, and then make sure you really study mic placement. There are a lot of phasing issues that you don't really have to worry about with other instruments that can happen with drums. So learning about phasing and learning about, the distance to the snare, and making sure your overheads are a good distance away and both kind of equidistant to the snare drum, and all these little things that over the years you kind of just learn, and
Mhm.
they can all really add up big time.
I think one of the things that can be cool to learn when you're doing the home studio vibe for recording things like drums is, so the drums are loud. How are you going to hear them when they're happening? You're just going to hear drums in the room. And it's getting into that habit of going like, I'll hit this, I'll put this mic here, I'll do a little bit of drums, and then we'll play it back to see what it sounds like. Now let's move the mic. Now let's do a little bit of drums, play it back. And you have to adopt that sort of, step-by-step bit until you can arrive at something that's really working pretty well. Just give yourself permission to do that, I think, right?
Exactly. And honestly, I've gotten in that situation where, a lot of the time, especially if you're new to it, you're going to be like scared to take the necessary amount of time to do the trial and error. But you're never going to, no one's going to be like, oh, wow, he's doing trial and error, he's not a pro. So don't worry about that. Get all that fear and the fear of judgment out of your system so that you can really deliver a high quality recording. And if it takes you 2 hours to get the drum sounds right, do it. Take those 2 hours, test it out. If there's, the kick drum mic sounds super thin, mess with the placement a little bit. Hey, we're not getting the tone that we really want out of the kick drum. We're going to move around a little bit. Just keep playing for us, or play a bar, and we'll listen back until we get it.
Yeah. Just don't do it at the same 2 hours when the band was ready to do the take.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes. No doubt. I mean, honestly, a lot of the time you want the drummer to get there a little earlier than the rest of the guys. So that's one of the reasons, because in my experience, audio wise, the drums are really the most time consuming setup, and making sure that everything there's a lot that can go wrong with drums that can't really go wrong with a lot of other instruments.
Yeah. Okay. The secret to a great mix is to start with great source tracks, and this means you need great microphones. JZ Mics in Riga, Latvia brings you the new BB29 Signature Series microphone to help your recordings add clarity and detail to your mixes. At the heart of JZ microphones is the unique Golden Drop capsule design with a lighter, faster diaphragm that delivers great clarity and fidelity without distracting colorations and distortions. The new BB29 microphone has a Class A discrete amplifier circuit, extremely low self-noise, and transformer-coupled output to bring an expensive sound to your studio for an affordable price. JZ offers a 5-year warranty, free shipping to the US, and a 30-day money-back guarantee. Plus, for a limited time, you can use the coupon code ROCKSTARS to get 50% off the BB29 at jzmic.com. Want to record killer drums in your home studio? Rockstars of Drums will show you how to record, edit, and mix pro-sounding drums with a Nashville session drummer in a Grammy-winning studio. Want to start mastering your own records? Rockstars of Mastering walks you through exactly how I mastered my own record using nothing but plugins and PreSonus Studio One. Want to learn how to create a mix that doesn't suck but rocks instead? At Mixmaster Bundle, I show you how to mix using stock and free plugins so that you can have punchy, powerful drums, guitars that rock, bass you can feel, and a mix that is in your face. Plus, it's totally free as my way of saying thanks for listening. Then go to mixmasterbundle.com to get started for free now, and look for the clickable link in the show notes below. What about bass? What are some ways that you like to record bass that has worked well for you in a home studio setup?
Man, home studio bass, I go right into the board. I got a DI box and I call it a day. I don't even set up a cabinet 99% of the time. With Stayin Inside, he ran right into his board, sent it over to me. You can always add some amp simulators after the fact, and that's what I usually do. Is I use the Waves GTR a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and it's really great because you can blend the direct signal with the dry signal. Most of the time, I'll use it, 100% the emulator. I don't even use really the direct signal, but I warm it up and I add some bass because a lot of the time with the direct, you don't get the full bass tone. You don't get that powerful low end, but those plugins can really bring it out. So I turn the bass all the way up, on the equalizer on the GCR plugin. Anything you can do to saturate it or fill it up, even adding a little distortion a lot of the time, depending on the mix, can really make a big difference.
And the GTR is amp simulator?
Yep. It's just your basic guitar amp simulator, but they've got presets. And honestly, I use a lot of presets. I really do. And then I tweak from there. But they've got some bass presets. One's called Activator, I believe, is one of my favorites. But it just adds a lot of depth and low end, and it sounds like it's coming through an amp instead of just, all right, here's your direct bass tone,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I love the way a direct bass tone sounds for some things.
Mm-hmm.
I love the way an amp sounds for some things. I hate the way it sounds when I've recorded a DI and an amp and then tried to get them to line up together again.
It can really be a nightmare.
Yeah. And I never did own there's a box called the Little Labs IBP, which is where you can sort of adjust the phase of the DI incrementally against the amp. And I've only messed around with those once or twice, but I would have loved to have something like that for doing that. But really, plug-in amps have gotten so good now that it's just so much easier to just know that you're capturing a really great starting point and you've got the flexibility to get there.
100%. I mean, that's really what I do. I just try to make sure that the take is really good. And then, you can always thicken it up later on. You can always add a little more low end if you need it. I usually cut out a little bit of the 500 area because it just makes it sound less flat, and
Mm-hmm.
you can bring up a little bit of that 4K if you want some more string noise action and stuff. So just like little things like that can really go a long, long way with bass tone.
What about vocals? So, we've already talked some about singing well on the mic. Talk a little bit about vocal techniques or mic techniques rather that you've learned. Where are we supposed to be on the mic? Is there like this one perfect spot and that's, you just need to arrive at it, or are you moving around on the mic? I mean, do we need to get bold and like go to the back of the room and sing on the mic sometimes?
I really try to stay between like 3 and 12 inches from the mic, but I will try to be consistent. So like on Here With Me, my latest single that I released last Friday, for instance, I was right up on the mic for most of that song because I wanted it to sound really intimate. I wanted it to sound really in your face. The sibilance obviously is going to be the main issue when you get right up on the mic. But as long as you've got some good de-essers, you can kind of get around that. But
so it's worse. The closer we are to the mic, the worse the sibilance gets, right? The essence.
Oh yeah. I mean, you can honestly probably hear it now, right? If I do S S S and I get right up on the mic,
you
and
sound great, dude. You really can't go wrong. That's just.
But you can tell the sibilance is really going to probably be the issue if you're right up on the mic compared to further off. So a lot of the time, in your favorite pop records or rock records, they're 6 to 12 inches off most of the time.
Have you found some favorite de-essers or anything like that?
I love the Waves stuff. Honestly, the Waves de-esser is really great. I've actually been diving into more of the IK Multimedia stuff. They've got some really, really great plugins too. But I'm just so familiar with the Waves. The Waves it's called de-esser, and it's really great. You just pull the fader down and it's like, okay, cool. There it is.
Now, do you find that when you're mixing and you're de-essing your voice, do you find that you just need one of those, or have you learned that you need to have more than one dialed into different frequencies or anything about that you want to talk about?
It really depends on what the vocal sounds like naturally. And for that, you really got to trust your ears and A/B it with some records that you really respect and that you know are done well. But for Here With Me, I think I had two de-essers. I had one right before the compressor and one a little bit right after, just to tame it a little bit. But what I've been doing recently, usually the de-essers are set most of the time with it just turns down the top end, so it doesn't take away the body of it of the vocal. But recently, I've been doing, and I forget the name of the setting, but I've been doing it to where it brings down the overall, like the complete level.
Hmm.
And I've actually gotten more transparent results because a lot of the time, if you just do the top end one, it sounds like you've almost got a lisp a lot of the time if you overdo it, especially. But with the other setting where it brings down the whole EQ spectrum, and I forget, maybe you would know what the name of
No,
it is. I'm
I
blanking on it right now,
yeah, I
but
don't know what the names. I mean, one is just like it's just full bandwidth. It would bring down the
yeah,
whole level,
yeah, it's
or
wide. Yeah,
crossover
wide
bandwidth. Yeah,
versus top. Yeah.
yeah,
So, a lot of de-essers by default will just bring down the top end where, the S's are, but the wide band EQ, um, I've been really enjoying the results that I'm getting with that a lot better
yeah.
recently with the lead vocals. So worth a shot to
Okay.
try out. But it's just experimentation.
What about compression on the voice? What sort of things have you learned about that?
I love compression. I really love it. It's like the single best way I think to get a radio quality vocal. I like, EQing before the compressor, and then I'll hit it hard. A lot of the time I'll add a 2A. 2A is like my favorite vocal compressor personally. And then what I'll also do to give it a little bit more punch and clarity is I'll add a 76, 1176 at the end of it, like after the
Nice.
2A. So I'll hit it with the 2A with, I use the Waves CLA 2A a lot. Um, and then I'll hit it with the Waves CLA 76 after, but the 2A will de-ess it just a little bit. It kind of, you can set it to sibilant Vox, and it really, it helps a lot. And then you just adjust the setting. I try to shoot for maybe 3 to 5 dB. Sometimes, with certain vocals, you can go up to 8 to 20 dB of gain reduction, and it just makes it sit just right in that mix.
Nice.
And then on top of that, I will use a 76 and just crush crush it to, basically getting rid of all the dynamics. It depends on the track, but with pop, you almost can't overcompress the vocal nowadays, which is, it's crazy. But I really have loved the sound of a very compressed vocal.
Almost like a distorted guitar is like square waved tone, and it makes it sit out front for that melody. It's almost like you have to recreate that for the vocals.
Yeah, yeah. No, I I love compression on the voice, and especially with Here With Me, I used that, and then sometimes I'll even add a limiter on the end of that. So I'll have EQ going into 2 or 3 compressors, each doing 5 to, well, I guess probably 3 to 8 dB, depending on the compressor and how hard it's hitting. And then, maybe a limiter, maybe an L3 limiter at the end of it.
Now, but you're recording without all those things, right? You're adding that
Yes.
later. So
Yeah.
have you experimented with recording with that much compression and learned that that doesn't really work and it's better to just have a raw tone? Like as a singer, does it irritate you when you hear your voice in the headphones sounding manipulated?
I love it, honestly. I usually don't use a lot of compression, but I will use some because a lot of the time I'll have the tendency, if I don't have that compressor, I'll have the tendency to back away from the microphone when I'm really projecting or when I get really loud in my take. And I don't want to blow my ears out. So if you have that compressor or that limiter while you're recording, the only issue is delay compensation. So just making sure that your processing is good, or at least you've got a lower. I think I record it usually like 64. What do you call it? Sample rate, maybe.
Yeah, the buffer setting
Yeah,
for
the buffer setting,
the.
exactly. Yeah, so low buffer setting for low latency.
Now, does the latency really, have you just learned to deal with latency, or does it really mess with your head? Do you find that like a bigger latency is better than a tiny one because, you get a different sort of phase feeling, or like it affects the low end? Sometimes I feel like the latency can just make me really doubt my own voice in the headphones.
I hate it. I absolutely despise like singing with latency, because I mean, your ear is constantly trying to adjust to what you're hearing, right? So if you're not hearing it in real time, your pitch is going to be a little bit off, because you're not hearing your pitch until slightly after you actually sing it, so you can't adjust. And then when you adjust, it's like you're chasing a moving target.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really painful, and it honestly, I've walked away from several, recording sessions of me trying to record my own vocals, thinking, "Oh my gosh, I'm the worst singer in the world." And then I change the buffer setting to super low, and I get rid of the latency, or I take the plugins off, and all of a sudden I can sing again. And I'm like, "Okay, it wasn't me, it was the buffer setting." Or at least, that's what I like to tell myself.
Right. And then do you do the one ear off trick for your headphones?
I like to do both ears on, but I know a lot of pro singers do like one ear off, but it just kind of depends on what you're used to. And for me, it's kind of weird. I feel like I don't really hear the uh, the pitch right, when I've got one ear off, and it's kind of disorienting to me. So
Hmm.
I don't know how people do that so well and sing on pitch, because I don't know. It could just be an illusion thing, but when I'm listening with one ear to anything, I'm never 100% sure of where the exact center of that pitch is. It's so weird. I don't know. I don't know how to explain it, but
Are there certain instruments in a mix that you tend to favor in order to get your pitch center? Have you learned anything about that? Like, do you
yeah,
do you reach for
keyboards.
the bass? Oh, keyboards. All right.
Yeah, keyboards and guitar I think the bass is one of the hardest instruments to hear pitch reference vocally from.
Okay.
So if a lot of the time, a lot of singers will ask for more keys or more guitar when they're trying to sing or get their pitch reference. And actually, with Here With Me, I took a lot of the synth out and I just had it muted when I was recording my voice, because it was kind of throwing me off a little bit, from the pitch. So synth, can, if it's got a lot of effects on it or whatever, a lot of the time it can kind of get in the way of you singing on pitch. So I try to
Right.
just listen to the keyboards or the piano. Piano is super great. Guitar is really great as long as it's in tune. There are
Hmm.
the out of tune guitar tracks that are impossible to sing to, or no matter how you sing, it's just like, man, am I off? What's going on?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, no, that's good advice. And then, whenever there's a chorusy pitch effect on a keyboard, that's going to screw up the ability to sing to it too, right?
yeah, depending on how loud it is and how much chorus you got on there. So
Well, let's talk more about low end.
yep.
Recording, mixing in a home studio. You've learned ways to get the bass to sound cool. What's your process for getting the final result and going, this is the right amount of bass and low end on my mix versus, damn, this sucks. What am I doing wrong?
Yeah. That's the biggest challenge to being in a home studio. And I really need to just buy a sub or something so that I can really monitor the low end better. But I've got some KRK Rocket sixes that I use, and they're just, they're not anything fancy, but I really know them well, and I know how much bass is works for these speakers. And I know my speakers, and I think honestly, as long as you know your equipment and you reference a lot of stuff before you bounce it down, you're gonna be in the ballpark. There's just no way not to. I used headphones for the longest time. I only mixed with Beats, and a lot of engineers look at me like, man, you're insane. Wow, like, you really don't know what you're doing, but I knew Beats. I mean, I really knew my Beat Studios,
Hmm.
and I think as long as you know what whatever you're listening on should sound like, you can always get in the ballpark of where it should be low end wise, what you need to add or what you need to subtract, or is my mix too harsh? And then also reference tracks. That's just number one. If you're going to be in a home studio and mixing in a home studio, you've got to have reference tracks, because otherwise you're flying blind. You don't have the $1 million equipment, like Lidge does over there. But you know, we're not we don't have the equipment to really trust what we're monitoring with. So we've really got to make sure that we're listening to those really well done records to make sure that we're in the right ballpark. Also, for low end, I I love going to my car and just playing
Mm-hmm.
the MP3 or playing the Bluetooth, and going for a drive, listen to the low end. Okay, then go back to one of my favorite records or something in that genre, go back to my song. Okay, what's it missing? And then go back in the studio, tweak a little bit, go back for another ride. It's just a lot of little tweaks here and there, especially if you want it to be totally top notch and super pro sounding.
Yeah, I've thought about that a lot about the car jam for me, and I have a tendency to want to turn it up, and I
Mhm.
and I think what I've learned is that I like to turn it up until the mid range hits me just right, and at that point, the low end needs to be appropriately balanced against where I've set it,
Yep,
and
absolutely.
that's where it'll throw me. I'll be like, like the low end's way too much or it's not enough or something, and then I'll recognize that I've screwed it up.
Yeah, but then, like I said with the reference tracks, I mean, that's like so big. People don't really understand. They're like, "Oh yeah, it sounds good," right? But if you're not listening to reference tracks, and I did this for a long time just because I was scared. I was like, I don't want to compare myself to these like $1 million budget releases. I mean, how could I possibly compete with that? But when you do that and you're honest with yourself and you're open to that, self criticism, it's amazing what you can achieve quality wise. It really is.
Yeah. Anything else about the mix, or the mix setup? Do you start to work with a template when you're mixing? Do you have stuff you like to do
Yes.
to the master bus?
Yeah. Templates are huge. They can save you so much time. A lot of the time, I'll use the um, same chain on a lot of instruments, bass, vocals, whatever. And so I can even load it, in Pro Tools, you can load or, you know, import session data from a mix that I love that was in that genre. I can just import all that and have that as the starting point and then tweak from there. But a lot of the time I'll start with the templates, and Dave Pensado is another great resource that I used for templates. And Graham Cochran, I know you've interviewed him, which
Yeah.
I mean, he honestly was the beginning of my education with mixing. I mean, he's got so many amazing videos, and shout out to him for making all that amazing free content,
So cool,
because
man.
that, I mean, it really did. It gave me my start. And I remembered, emailing him or whatever and be like, "Hey, I can't get my mix to sound like this." He would take the time to respond back to me, and just a really nice guy seems like. But I'd love to meet him at some point.
You should.
But yeah, I mean,
He is a great dude. I know him
yeah,
and like him a lot.
that's awesome.
Okay, cool. So, sorry, what were you saying? So, referencing, was there anything else about compression or limiting on your mix bus? You talked about getting stuff to sound like a record before you send it to somebody.
Yeah, so the templates are really important because they allow you to already be in that professional ballpark. Like I said, I use the same sort of mastering chain on pretty much every track. I've just got my mastering system, and I go ahead and throw that on as soon as I know that all the tracks are done recording wise. Or say they've already recorded and they're just sending me their tracks to mix. Then I'll just go into that. I'll go into my session. I'll throw the mastering stuff on pretty early on. I'll get the rough mix, but I think the best advice I could give to anybody in the home studio situation is try to get an amazing mix, um, without touching anything other than the volume fader. And it's a trick that I know a lot of pros use, and maybe even you use it. But if you do that, I'm telling you, your mix will be 90% done before you know it. And then it's just about getting that last 10%. But the most important thing about mixing is, can you hear everything?
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the time I love adding an EQ, and I'll scoop out everything below 80 hertz or 100 hertz on everything except for the bass instruments, and that already cleans up your mix like 90%. You're already going to be in the ballpark as long as everything's in the volume, or in the ballpark of the volume that you're going for. And then what I like to do is add compression to pretty much everything, at least a little bit, so that I know it's at a consistent level and I can kind of tweak from there. But if you just add a little bit of compression and get it to the right volume, I mean, your mix will basically be done.
That's awesome. Do you feel like the time you spent watching YouTube videos, trying out mix tricks, and tweaking version after version of your mixes has gotten you nowhere? Have you been looking for a simple, straightforward, step-by-step process for creating a pro mix that won't take years to learn? What if you could have a Grammy-winning mix engineer who understood all your mixing struggles and could coach you through them? If you struggle with any of these questions, then the Ultimate Mixing Masterclass is just for you. Now you can discover the proven step-by-step mix system from Grammy-winning mixer Craig Alvin for consistently creating a pro-quality mix from your home studio that will sound amazing everywhere. Listen, I appreciate you listening to this podcast, and I know you're trying to make your best record ever. But when you're ready to take your mixes to Grammy-winning quality, then you're ready for UltimateMixingMasterclass.com. So we're coming up near the end here. I got one more question for you about, or maybe we'll do a couple about, part of our jam session questions before we do the final one. But we just did a workshop webinar where we talked about making videos and stuff like that. And it was put together by OWC, who's is also a sponsor on the show. And they have all these great tools for storage and backup and organizing your studio and stuff like that. And I wondered if you wanted to talk about anything you've learned about, backing up and storing all your music, keeping it organized, making sure you don't lose this important musical work that you've got.
Yeah, it's so important to have hard drives, external hard drives, and just backups of everything. I actually had a computer die on me when I was at the finishing part of an EP that I was working for a client, and had to start all over because I didn't do that. And it is the worst feeling you will ever have in your life, especially as an engineer, because you're like, hey, yeah, all that hard work we just did. Yeah, we got to do it all over again. So it's just, you never want to be in that situation. And OWC makes such great products for such an amazing price that you really have no excuse anymore. I remember, 10 years ago, and I was really starting to get into mixing and everything, which sounds funny to think that it's already been 10 years. But, I remember when a 1 terabyte hard drive was like $800, and now you can get like a 5 terabyte hard drive for what, like $300 or something like that. I mean, it's insane, the amount of data. Yeah, I mean, you've got 1 terabyte flash drives that I actually just recently got with OWC. That's just insane. I mean, it's a flash drive and it can hold a terabyte. Like, what?
The Envoy Pro Mini. Actually, it's not even a flash. Is it a flash drive? I guess it's not a USB stick. It's a actual SSD, right?
Mine is yeah. I mean, mine goes into the USB port, so it kind of functions like a flash drive, but it is SSD, which is even crazier because it's lightning fast.
Yeah, super fast. In fact, I had one in my bag to go to do my next interview today. That's how
awesome.
I'll be collecting the audio files. What about just process for you? How do you back up your stuff? What's your methodology that works where you feel like you can sleep at night?
Yeah, so I like to record everything, like all of my mixes and stuff. I try to plug in. I only keep the sessions that I know I will need portable on my laptop, and then everything else I put on my hard drive. and then I copy that hard drive to another hard drive so that I have a backup, working backup. But I've got a couple of FireWire Glyph hard drives. I'm probably gonna upgrade to an OWC because mine are super old. Like I said, I bought them in like 2010 probably, and they're starting to fill up a little bit. So it might be time to go and buy some OWC hard drives actually.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's really good to have. Yeah, I would say at least two external hard drives, just because you want another copy. It's never enough to really have one copy of something, especially now. If a hard drive craps out on you, I mean, I've heard stories where two hard drives have crapped out on people within a week. So you never know. It's always good to have as much redundancy as possible.
Well, one of the cool things that OWC makes, I actually don't have one here, but I could considered it for a minute, especially if you're dealing with some of the older computers. So I still have computers that go back to, the G3, the G4, the dual, what is it? The dual drive mirror G4, I think was one of my last computers before the one I've got now. But, internal drives and, the 3.5 and the 2.5, they make something called the OWC drive dock, which looks like a toaster. And you can plug that into your computer with the USB. And then you just take these naked drives and just pop them right into the slots. And they can do things like record onto two drives at once, or, duplicate drives to each
No
other.
way.
And it's just like such a fast, easy way to kind of intermingle your old studio tech with the new stuff at the
No,
same
that's
time.
amazing. That's incredible.
Yeah, because I mean, you talk about you've mentioned old technology a couple of times, but it's a thing that we deal with in the studio where we're like, once you get your studio going, you're like, I'm making a record that I love on it. Why do I want to change everything? Or this works.
Hmm.
And,
Yeah.
studio life is much more than just, I got the latest OS or I've got the latest computer. You're like, every one of those decisions has a total domino effect across the entire studio that we're always thinking about,
Absolutely. Absolutely. I can't even tell you how many times I've upgraded my laptop and totally regretted it. I'm like, oh my goodness, why did I do that? Now I've got to upgrade everything. I got to upgrade Pro Tools. I got to upgrade the drivers in every single bit of my software. I got to upgrade all the Waves plugins. It's like, if it's broke, a lot of the time it's just a lot easier just to keep what you've got. You know how to use it. You know that it works. And I can't even tell you how many pieces of software where I've upgraded and then, found out that it's not even compatible with that new
Yeah.
upgrade. And I'm like, I'm just like hitting myself, and then you got to reboot your whole computer. You got to reinstall the previous version, but it's hard to find because it's not the newest version now. And it's just
That stuff
crazy.
will drive you nuts. So
Oh yeah.
kudos to OWC for letting us, mix the old and the new.
No doubt.
All right, cool. So let's see. Let's do one more question and then we'll do the last one. So give us a tip or a resource that helps you out with the business side of doing music.
The best one I've found is invoicegenerator.com, but it's invoice-generator.com. And I've been using this for probably over 10 years, honestly, but it's great because you can just make an amazing, simple, pro looking invoice, like really, really fast. And, it's easy. You can just shoot it over, you download it, you email it to your client. You don't have to have like QuickBooks or download this whole like invoicing subscription program. But I love it. It's a great resource, especially if you want a pro looking invoice, something that's simple, and obviously if you're doing mixes for clients, hopefully you're getting paid. And if you're not, you should be. So it just kind of keeps you on track. And then I use Google Sheets to make sure that, everyone's paid. I make sure I keep records, detailed records of how much it's paid. Is there an outstanding balance? Do I need to follow up with them? All that stuff, so that it's readily available, and you aren't the one like, hey man, did you pay? Did you pay me yet? Or it's possible I might have forgotten and you did just pay me, but you don't want to
Right.
be that guy. So
Yeah. Yeah, it's a bummer when you're having to ask to get paid And it's an even worse bummer when somebody else is asking you to get paid, and you don't want to be that, like you said, that guy who forgot to pay the musician.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, cool. So let's take this last question is hypothetical, but you're going to take the Wayback Studio machine and you go back in time. Bloop, 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 bloop. That was the back in time sound effect today.
I loved that.
Yeah, thanks, man. And you're going to go back and find young Brent, and maybe, maybe you just got your first M box and you're in your dorm room and you say, listen, dude, you bust through the door with a Superman cape on. You say, I've come back to give you this one bit of advice. Here's the single most important thing you need to know to be a rock star of the studio yourself one day. What advice would you go back and give yourself if you could?
I would tell myself just to do it, do it all the time. Don't procrastinate, go for it, soak in as much knowledge as you can, make as much music as you can, and don't fall into the trap of trying to achieve perfection. Just be creative, be fearless, and just put it out there and you will get better.
Nice. I like the put it out there part. Sometimes that's the struggle for me.
Oh my gosh, me too. I mean, I can't even tell you how many times I've sat on a track for 5 or 10 years, where I'm like, is it good enough yet? Oh, I think it could be improved a little bit. Or, at the end of the day, if you don't release it, it's just wasted and it's not going to do anything for you. It's not going to do anything for anybody else. So just don't be afraid, be bold, go ahead and go for it. You're going to learn along the way. It's not going to be perfect. Nothing's ever going to be perfect. So just accept that as a reality and just do the best you can with what you've got and, with the resources that you have at your disposal.
I like that what you said about it's not going to do anything for anybody else if you don't release it. That's a great reminder. And that helps me because sometimes the getting stuck point is, well, I made the music. It was fun to do it. Now the rest of it, putting it out there just feels like clerical, bureaucratic work to kind of get it out there. What's the reward? Well, maybe the reward is just knowing that somewhere out there, there's somebody who is going to enjoy every one of our bits of music and it will help them out in that moment, that day. And we might have a little bit of an obligation to share our music with the world.
Yeah, I think, as musicians and creators, we are like selfless in nature. And I think that, our job is to give people what they want in entertainment or in a performance or something that's relatable or something that's powerful or moving. I mean, that's our job to create that. And it's a really important role. I mean, without the creators of that kind of stuff, I mean, the world would be a very boring place. So
yeah,
to go into it with the mindset of, oh, no one's going to care or no one's going to enjoy this. I mean, even if one person listens to it and it, moves them or makes them cry or makes them think about, the important things in their lives, like it's worth it. You know what I mean? I mean, you don't have to go get millions of views on everything. I mean, I was making videos long before Stayin Inside happened, and I'm going to continue making videos long after Stayin Inside happened. It's not like, oh, everything else was a failure except for Stayin Inside because that got the most views. It's like, no, everything is equally important and everything has its place in your journey. So don't be ashamed of it.
And imagine if you didn't release Stayin Inside because you just got to the point where you're like, you just thought it was a funny joke between you and a few friends, and never put it out or something.
Absolutely. Or, maybe I was scared of judgment. I had a lot of people tell me, hey, don't release that. It's going to be offensive. Like people are going to, it could ruin your career. And I was like, if it ruins my career, so be it. Whatever. I don't care, And I just put it out there and it could have very well ended up being a bad decision, but I got so many positive responses from it. And I knew deep down that it had a good message and it was a good thing. And I didn't think that people would be super offended. I mean, I saw way more offensive covers than that and I still do to this day. But anyway, I thought it spreaded a good message. So.
Nice. Well, dude, thanks so much for hanging with us on Recording Studio Rockstars today. Great to hang with you for the podcast. It was great to do the workshop webinar with you previously. Rockstars, a reminder, I'll include that in the playlist as well, too, so you can just go watch that and hear Brent talking about making the video as well as Kurt and Tony, two other people that, Tony's been on the podcast too. I'd love to have Kurt on the podcast. Let the rock stars know where they can go find out more about you, Brent. Where should they go check out your music? What if they need to just, what if they're looking for a producer for their next hit record?
Yeah. My website is brentmccmusic.com, and my Instagram and social media, everything is Brent MCC Music. It's just at Brent MCC Music. And my email is brentmccmusic@gmail.com. And I try to, answer every email and all that stuff. So if you guys do have questions or want to follow up or whatever, feel free to reach out.
Awesome, dude. Well, a total pleasure hanging with you. We're overdue for hanging for coffee. You have to come over and see the new speaker system going into the studio as it gets put together.
Yes, and I still got to see that Bee Gees console too.
That's right, man. That's right. And I'll make you a mean oat milk cappuccino. That's my new specialty in the studio now.
I'm so down. Well, it's been an absolute honor. Thank you so much for having me, Lidge.
Dude, it's a pleasure, man. Look forward to running into each other soon.
Likewise. Thank you.
Cheers. Thanks so much for listening to Recording Studio Rockstars. If you enjoyed the show and want to help make it better, then please share this episode with your friends on social media and leave a rating and review on iTunes to help the podcast reach more rock stars like yourself. You can click directly over to iTunes or go to rsrockstars.com/review for an easy explanation. And remember to hit the subscribe button to keep up with weekly episodes. And if you're ready to make your best record ever now, then head over to Recording Studio Rockstars Academy, where you can start with my free course at mixmasterbundle.com. And if you want more free content from Recording Studio Rockstars, all you have to do is go to rsrockstars.com/email. Again, that's rsrockstars.com/email to enter your name and email, and I'll keep you in the loop with articles, videos, podcast updates, and even free gear giveaways for your studio. Just look for the link in the show notes below. Thanks so much for listening, and thanks for being a rock star. I'm Lid Shaw, and this is Recording Studio Rockstars. Now, go make great music. Recording Studio Rockstars would like to give a big thank you to our amazing sponsors who help make this episode possible. Sound Porter Mastering, OWC, Atom Audio, Spectra 1964, Isotope, and JZ Microphones. Remember to get your free mastering demo at soundporter.com and use the coupon codes ROCK10 at Isotope for an additional 10% off, and ROCKSTARS at jzmic.com for 50% off the BB29 for a limited time. You'll find links to all these wonderful sponsors in our show notes. These are all things I highly recommend for your studio. They're going to help you make your best record ever. I would also like to give a big thank you to our Rockstar team here at Recording Studio Rockstars, Vlad Weselchenko, Braden Stremming, and Hugh McDonald for additional podcasts and video production. You guys rock. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode. Cheers.